Hey guys, it's Sherlock here. Let's have a chat about gems in New World. These shiny little stones might look small, but they can pack a serious punch. Whether you're trying to deal some big damage, take less of a beating, or control aggro like a pro tank, the right gems are a game changer. In this video, we're breaking down everything that you need to know about gems. We'll cover how to get them, what they do, and how to make sure you're using the right ones for whatever content that you are running, whether it's PvE, PvP, or that tough boss fight that you're stuck on. We'll go through all 14 gems, explain when and why you should use each one, and by the end of this, you'll know exactly how to make your gear work for you. And hey, if you ever find yourself thinking, wait, what gem should I be running for this boss? Don't stress, just head over to newworldbuilds.com for detailed recommendations on which gems to slot for each mob type and boss. Now, let's jump in and get started. So let's talk about how to actually get your hands on gems in New World. So the easiest way by far is to just hit up the trade post. If you've got the coin, you can buy pretty much any gem you need, already cut and ready to slot into your gear. This is a great option if you're in a hurry or you just don't feel like grinding for gems. But if you want to go the self-sufficient route or you're looking to save some gold, you can mine and craft the gems yourself. If you're going the DIY route, the first thing you want to do is head out the world and start mining. You can mine gems from various ores like iron, silver, and gold, and higher tier ores. Keep in mind that raw gemstones are rare, so don't expect them to pop up all of the time. But when they do, it feels pretty good. Once you've got your raw gemstones, the next step is to refine them. To do that, you'll need to visit the outfitting station. This is where you can turn your raw gems into the cut gems that can actually be slotted into your gear. But refining gems requires more than just raw gemstones. You'll also need motes, wisps, or essences. These are elemental materials that are tied to specific gem types. So if you're refining a ruby, you're going to need fire motes. If you're working on an aquamarine, you're going to need water mote. And if you move up to higher tier gems, you'll need better versions of these materials. There are 4 tiers of gems in New World. You have cut flawed, you have cut brilliant, and cut pristine. The higher the tier, the more powerful the gems affect. So if you really want to max out your gear, you're going to want those pristine gems for the biggest bonuses. Whether you buy them or craft them, pristine gems are what you should be aiming for. Once you've got your gem, whether you bought it off the trade post or you crafted it yourself, slotting it into your gear is easy. You just drag the gem onto a weapon or armor piece with an open socket, and that's it. The effects apply instantly. But here is one catch. Once you've slotted a gem, it's locked in. You can replace it with a new one later, but the original gem gets destroyed in the process. So be sure you're making the right call before you slot in that shiny new pristine gem you just got. So quick recap. The easiest way to get gems is buying them on the trade post. If you prefer to do it yourself, you'll need to mine raw gemstone and refine them at the outfitting table using motes and essences. Either way, once you've got your gem, slot it into your gear and you're ready to go. How do you match your gems to the content that you are running? Whether that's PvE, PvP, or those brutal boss fight, the key here is maximizing your protection and damage output. And the way you do that is by matching your gems to the type of enemies you're facing. Let's start with maximizing protection. If you're running high level PvE content like Mutations, your best bet is to stack cut pristine gems. When you fully slot your gear with cut pristine gems that match the element of the enemies you are facing, you can get up to 63% protection from that specific element. When paired with an amulet that has the same elemental protection, this is huge, especially when you're running harder content like M3s where that extra protection can be the difference between survival and a wipe. So if you're running a dungeon with a lot of fire damage, you're going to want to slot ruby gems in your armor for that sweet fire protection. 63% is the recommended target for high level mutations, so aim for full sets of cut pristine gems when you can, including matching your amulet protection to the mutation. Hey guys, this is Editing Sherlock here. I just wanted to make a quick note. I forgot to mention shields when it comes to protection. So if you have a bit of a look here, you can also get shield ward. Now you can get this for any of the elemental or the physical type protection, so as we're talking about now, flame, or you can even get slash, etc. So if you're running Sword and Shield or the Flail, I highly recommend having Enchanted Ward and some kind of Shield Ward protection on your shield as well. This here actually brings you up to 77.9% fire damage. And what's even crazier when it comes to the Sword and Shield, if we look in here, the perk Elemental Resistance actually gives us another 10% on top of that. So when you're running Sword and Shield in the mutations, you can actually get up to 87.9%, and this isn't including your armor rating as well. So you can actually have a crazy amount of protection with this build. Sorry if the audio is a bit different there, just thought I'd butt in and add that in too. Now, ideally, as you progress through the game, you want to have multiple sets of armor with different gem protections for different boss fights. That way, you can easily switch out for gear based on the enemies you are about to face. For example, if you know the boss deals a lot of void damage, you can have it set ready with amethyst gems slotted. But let's be real, not everyone has the time or the resources to build multiple sets of armor right away, especially if you're just starting out. So what can you do if you're still gearing up? One of the easiest solutions is to start by switching your amulet. Amulets are a great way to tweak your protection without overhauling your entire gear set. You can have different amulets with gems slotted for fire, void, or ice, and other damage type, and then just swap them out depending on the boss or enemies that you are facing. This lets you boost your protection without having to invest in multiple full gear sets right away. Now for boss fight, this level of preparation is crucial. You're going to want to make sure you've got the right gem slotted to counter the boss's main damage type. If you're fighting a boss that deals slash damage, slot moonstone gems to absorb that. If they deal strike damage, you'll want Jasper gems. And again, if you're ever unaware of what kind of damage a boss deals, head over to New World Builds. We've got detailed guides on what gems to use for every boss and dungeon, so you can always be prepared. For PvP, things get a little bit more unpredictable, since you can face a variety of builds in a single battle. That's why a more balanced approach works best. In PvP, you'll want a mix of physical and elemental protection. Slot ruby gems to help protect against fire staff users, and onyx or emerald gems to reduce physical or thrust damage from bow and musket players. It's all about covering your bases and being ready for anything your opponents throw at you. To sum it up, for maximizing protection in PvE, especially in a high level content like M3s, go for full cut pristine gems that match the element you are facing, aiming for that 63% protection sweet spot. If you're just starting out, swapping amulets is an easy way to boost your protection without needing full gear set, and for PvP, balance your gems between elemental and physical protection to handle a wide range of damage types. Trust me, with the right gem setup, you'll be ready for whatever comes your way. Hey guys, just another post-editing Sherlock note here. When it's coming to your early levels, you're doing open world, you're trying to do some lower mutation stuff, there's kind of two main things I would recommend. If you're mainly doing open world, just leveling, do some chest runs, that kind of thing, I'd recommend going something like 4 onyxes and 4 opals, just to give you a general split protection against everything. Like we said before, if you're trying to look to get into mutations and you don't want to keep switching gems around, just run full pristine opals if you can, and then start building up those protection amulets and switching those around to match the mutation. This will help you a lot early on without having to switch around too many gems and spend too much money. Alright, back to the video. Now that we've covered how to get gems and how to match them to your content, let's go over all of the gems in New World and break down when and why you would want to use each one. There are 14 different types of gems in total, and each one has a unique use case depending on whether you're slotting them in weapons or armor. Let's start with the elemental gems. These all work in a pretty similar way. When slotted into a weapon, they convert 50% of your damage to a specific elemental type. So for example, slotting a ruby will turn half of your weapon's damage into fire damage, while amethyst will convert it into void damage. This is super useful when you know the enemies you're facing are weak to a certain element. In PvE, elemental gems are key for stacking damage against bosses or enemies that have specific weaknesses. In armor, these same gems focus on damage absorption from respective elements. Slot a ruby in your chest piece and you'll take less fire damage. Slot an aquamarine and you'll reduce incoming ice damage. The strategy here is to match the gems to the type of damage the enemies or bosses are dishing out. So here's a quick rundown of the elemental gems. Ruby converts weapon damage to fire and absorbs fire damage. Aquamarine converts weapon damage to ice and absorbs ice damage in armor. Amethyst converts weapon damage to void and absorbs void damage in armor. Topaz converts weapon damage to lightning and absorbs lightning damage in armor. Sapphire converts weapon damage to arcane and absorbs arcane damage in armor. And Amber converts weapon damage to nature and absorbs nature damage in armor. If you're running into enemies or bosses that deal a lot of a certain type of elemental damage, you want to load up on these gems to boost your defenses. Next up, we have the physical protection gems, which are essential for reducing melee and physical damage. These are super important when you're tanking or up against bosses that hit hard with physical attack. So here's the breakdown. Onyxes reduce physical damage. So this one is great for PvE, for tanking, facing lots of melee enemies. In PvP, it helps against physical builds like great axe, hatchets, and spears. And you never really look at using onyx in a weapon as it's not very effective. Moonstones reduce slash damage. Perfect for enemies or bosses with swords and axes. There's quite a lot of bosses that will do some really big slash damage where Moonstone comes in handy. And some very niche weapon builds where you can use Moonstone in a weapon Don't worry too much about that now, you'll find out about that more in the future. Jaspers reduce strike damage, ideal for dealing with enemies that use blunt weapons or just smash you with heavy hits. Think about those massive bosses in dungeons. And you never really use Jasper in a weapon either. Emerald reduces thrust damage. This one's especially useful in PvP against bows and musket players, or against certain bosses in PvE that deal thrust damage. Now let's talk about the Carnelian, the go-to gem for tank. The Carnelian gem is all about threat generation and aggro control. Slot this into your weapon and it'll give you taunts, making it easier to keep the attention of mobs and bosses on you. The higher the tier of the Carnelian, the more threat you generate, which is crucial in group content where you're trying to protect your team. If you're tanking in New World, Carnelian is a must-have. For those running mutations or other high-level PvE content, a great alternative to constantly switching gems is to use Cut Pristine Opal. Opals will give you protection against all elemental type, allowing you to be flexible when you're trying to run many different types of mutations, whether it's to farm artifacts or gear upgrade. This might just save you a bit of money compared to slotting around different elemental gems, but it won't give you as much protection, so you might need to up your constitution level a little bit. So while it is a solid option to avoid constantly swapping gems, do just be prepared to play it a bit safer. Finally, let's talk about Diamond, which is one of the most versatile gems in the game. In weapons, Diamond gives you a bonus to damage when you're at full health. This makes him a great choice for DPS builds that can stay topped off. It's also fantastic for healers as a bonus applies to both your damage and your healing output. If you can keep yourself or your team at full health, Diamond gems are a great way to get that little bit of extra power. So to recap, elemental gems convert weapon damage and absorb specific elemental attacks in armor. Physical protection gems reduce damage from melee and physical attack. Carnelian is your best friend if you're tanking, giving you taunts and increased threat. And diamond gems are fantastic for keeping your damage and healing output high, especially when you're at full health. If you're looking for a flexible option and high level content without swapping gems, opals are a good choice, but be sure to bulk up on the constitution for the extra damage that you might take. Now that you know what each weapon does, you are ready to start slotting them into your gear and maximizing your build. If you ever need more specific recommendations on which gems to use for bosses or different content, check out the website for all the details. So to wrap things up, when it comes to the gems in New World, there's no one size fits all approach. The gems you choose should always depend on the content you're running and the enemies that you are facing. If you are running PvE content, especially the dungeons or mutations, you're going to want to slot elemental gems that match the damage type you're up against. For PvP, you want a more balanced setup that covers both physical and elemental damage. For weapons, diamond gems or elemental gems are usually your best bet, depending on what type of build you are running. If you're healing, diamond gems are great for maximizing your healing potential. And remember, you can always check out the website for more specific recommendations. If you're just starting out, don't stress too much about having full sets of gear for every situation. You can always just swap amulets to boost your elemental resistance without having to switch your armor pieces. And if you want to run mutations without constantly swapping gems, cut pristine opals are a solid option, but keep in mind that you'll be taking more damage overall. The main thing to remember is that gems are there to make your build stronger and to protect you from what's coming your way. So make sure you're adjusting your setup as you go. Whether you're tanking, you're dealing damage, or you're keeping your team alive, the right gems can make all the difference. Thanks for hanging out, and I hope this guide helps you crush it in New World. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment with any questions or anything I may have missed, and subscribe for more New World content. If you have any specific questions, come visit us on Twitch. We stream almost every day, and I'll see you in the next one.